What's shaking, everybody? Welcome back post-Christmas, post-holidays. It's the Orange Bloods Texas football channel. I'm Jeff. That's Anwar. We hope that you had a fantastic holidays, that you gave and you received in all the best ways possible. Here's to health and happiness with the family. Anwar and I are doing a Monday overreaction video, though, because the show must go on. We must record our Monday overreactions. Plus, it's sponsored. Shout out to the guys over at Rogue Apothecary, therogueshop.com. I got to admit, Rogue Anwar helped me through the holidays.
Brother, you and me both. You and me both. I had mom here. I had kids here. My ex-wife was here for a couple of days. Thank you, Rogue. Thank you, Richard. You helped us both. Life
that get you through the hardest days sometimes. And there are times when you don't even know that you need Rogue until you need it. And when it's there, it's a beautiful thing. Therogueshop.com, proud sponsors of the Monday Overreaction Show. Anwar, let's overreact. Let me start here. I have an overreaction that's very time specific to the next week. My overreaction is, the NCAA better cross its fingers and pray to God that the national championship is not decided by COVID forfeit.
Dude, I mean, everybody's coming down with this thing, dude. Like, first of all, I feel bad for everyone's fantasy football team because I don't know who the hell you had left to play if you're fortunate enough to make it to the semifinals. So you start there. Then we're canceling bowl games. Everybody I know is texting me that's with it. Like it's out of hand right now. And we're not going to make this political. We're not going to go in that kind of direction. We're keeping it from a sports perspective. So don't go there. I don't care.
I'm talking about the games, Anwar. Like,
yeah,
the ball's been dropping like flies.
Yeah. It's getting interesting to see how this thing is going to play out because we kind of at this point, everyone's kind of like the piano player in the whorehouse. Everyone's playing, and we're like, well, we don't know what's going on upstairs. Something's going on up there. And they're just like, I mean, we're just playing along, right? But we can't ignore it for too much longer. Like, hey, there's some stuff that's going on, and we got to hope like hell, like these games, what can be played can be played at this point.
It feels like, look, at this point, it feels like 50-50 that if we point to a bowl game, it feels like 50, because one of the things that's happened, and I think the NCAA is going to have to figure this out. I've been reading various things that they haven't adjusted their protocols in. And one of the things that the NBA and the NFL and all the sports have done over the course of the last 18 months or so is they're kind of figuring it out as they go. And the NFL has talked about, well, if someone has a vaccination, we're not going to test them as much, and they're going to do different things. The NCAA is kind of on the same path. I just hope it's not the championship game. I fully expect that one of the semifinals is decided through COVID. I don't want the national, and I'll shrug my shoulders and be like, okay, well, them's the breaks in 2021. But to get to a championship game and one of the teams not have enough players and the game not be able to be rescheduled because of television and hotels, and people forget about a national championship weekend. We're talking about millions of dollars to the city, millions and millions of dollars, but the hotel space that's reserved, it's not as simple as saying, we'll go back in 3 weeks to Miami.
Yeah.
All the hotels will be booked. Like, you wouldn't be able to put people in places. So the show will go on. I don't know what to even say about this bowl season, because so far it doesn't felt like it's impacted any of the big ones. But that's because the big ones are still far enough away that teams haven't, in a lot of cases, if you play on a big bowl game, you're probably just now getting back together around Christmas time to start the process of getting ready for that bowl. I don't know. It feels like a hovering. We don't have to stay on this very long, but it feels like the elephant in the room with the sport that we cover, that this entire bowl season is going to be remembered for COVID in ways that I'm not even sure last season is remembered, because they found a way to get through it, in part because COVID declined a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is a spike with the new variants. And I don't know, like I said, my overreaction is everybody needs to prepare themselves for the reality that this may be a season that is either defined by one of the semifinal teams not being able to play, or not even being able to play at full strength. Maybe they play a game, but a team doesn't have any wide receivers. But I guarantee you, if Alabama loses all of its wide receivers, Nick Saban would rather try to win that game without wide receivers than just quit. No, we have to quit in a national. It's never happened in sports, in major sports, where any title has been decided. You know, this is essentially the end of the Karate Kid, except Daniel doesn't walk out. It's like, oh, Johnny Lawrence is the champion. We just didn't have a final. Everybody cheer for Johnny because he got a walk in the final. Like, that has never happened before. It's just, other than the plot from the Karate Kid, I literally cannot think of a major sporting event in our lifetimes where we might see what we might see in the next week and a half or so. I don't mean to scare everybody. Like, that's not what I'm going for, but it's on the table in a way that's never been on the table before. And my eyes are open wide to it.
Yeah, and I thought when A&M had to drop out, there were some Texas fans on our board was wondering, like, what about us? Would it be replacement? It's like, let's just let this thing go, right? This is not what anyone wants. Quarterbacks in the transfer portal, like, just let this be Texas. Let's get to 2022 and move on.
Texas needs to learn. Here's another overreaction, or maybe this is just the reaction. Texas needs to look at what happened to Florida. Went to a damn bowl game, played it, lost to Central Florida by like 12. How'd that taste? Sometimes when your team doesn't want to play anymore, and it's obvious, those 15 practices just don't mean that much.
It sounds great. It sounds great on paper, right? Hey, there's 15 extra practices. Let those young guys get out there. And it's like, nah, I mean, I'm not quite sure that makes a huge difference. I've never subscribed to that, right? Because I've never subscribed to, like, well, what happens when they're seniors? You know, these guys are learning, developing in the system. Like, well, there's some seniors out there that play for pretty shitty teams as well. So, like, you can't go like 4 years later, they're going to be better. Sometimes it is what it is. And sometimes extra practices, it sounds good. Sometimes maybe just getting a mental break and regrouping and coming back, that's even better.
You're right, Anwar. Like, we as a society, as a sports fan society, we don't put enough emphasis on what the value of, like, a clean mental slate would mean. Like, hey, just go away and don't think about the crap from the last few months. A lot of times that's how teams bounce back. A lot of times it's the break and the recharge that's everything. And I think that's going to be the case for Steve Sarkisian's football team this year. Like, they've got to get over this winning against Kansas State, and they'd be like, oh, hey, we won. They didn't make the 2 months prior to that not happen. And, you know, I think that sometimes you know when you know, and I think we knew this was, and I think everybody in the program felt this. It was time. This season needed to end. This team needs to, Humpty Dumpty has to get put back together again, and a clean mental break. These kids just being able to get away from the locker room for a little bit, go be with their families during Christmas time, miss football a little bit, like go home and watch a few bowl games and be like, oh, we didn't do that. And, you know, let it organically, the recharging start. I think that that's what this team needs. And I bet we'll hear that in the spring and in the summer as this team talks about recharging and going after its goals. They'll turn that negative into a positive. I don't see how playing in a worthless bowl game and trying not and going through all of the hoops and things that teams are doing just to get to a game, only to play the game when you've had kids leave. I mean, Texas has had, just like Florida, Texas has had players bolt from the roster as soon as they could in December. Mm-hmm. So, I think that was a locker room that needs a freshening up. The air needs to be changed in the building. And I mean, you and I are happy, I think, right now.
Yeah.
That there's no blue, because this team isn't in a position to go beat good teams. It's not like they beat Kansas State and it's like, oh yeah, bring on a 9-3 Pac-12 team and let's see where Texas. No, man, like this team petered out at the finish line. And I think the mental recharge is better off than anything else.
Yeah. Oh, first of all, it helped me. I mean, look, shout out to, this is Rogue, and this is the Rogue Show. Shout out to our main man, Adam Lowy for the Lowy Law Firm. Didn't have a Sunday pulpit. He's the sponsor. But if you need to sue the shit out of somebody, call my main man, Adam Lowy. But yeah, just having a few days off, and like I feel better. I messaged you first thing in the morning, like, hey, what's going on? Like, when are we going to do this? Like,
let's do this today.
I felt good. So I think the mental recharge, I saw on Twitter, guys posting stuff with their families, and you can see some smiles. And I guarantee you there weren't a lot of smiles in that month of November, right? So being able to if you think of a guy like Xavier Worthy, finally be able to go home, be around mom, be around the family, everybody, and then be able to say, I'm going to come back here in January. I'm ready to go, hit the ground running. Like, it does mean something to folks. It means probably something to, Hudson Card, after all this stuff is going on, to be home with the family, recharge, be ready to figure out a decision, all that. I got an overreaction for you though, Catch.
Hit me.
What the hell's going on, Cameron Dicker? Where do you go? What are you going to do, my man? Like, wait a second, Cameron. What's going on to the decision-making process? Because Catch, I saw your column, and over the week. Actually, I guess it would have been sometime this morning. I must have read. I woke up in the middle of the night. My mom had to get her to the airport at 4, so I was up. I was up pretty early, but in any case. And so, I read some of his stuff, and over the weekend, I actually did kick the tires on this. Surprisingly, I don't know why, and found out that Dicker still hasn't made a decision, which, obviously it's known, and he's still kind of going through the process of deciding. And I'm kind of in that, what is going on here, Cameron? Like, because, his return makes a huge difference in a lot of different things, whether Catch it's the consistency of being able to have that kicker, or the scholarship numbers that you kind of alluded to. We don't talk about kickers that much. We don't talk about special teams, but then we talk about a kicker, a punter, that he's a huge part of like what you would want to have. It's one of those things that you don't miss it until it's gone, right, Catch? Like no one cares about kickers and punters until you don't have one. Then everyone's like, where the hell is our kicker? Where the hell is our punter? So I'm kind of on my overreaction Monday is, Cameron Dicker, what are you doing?
It's not like he's waiting till January 15th to hear back from a draft advisory committee of what his stock would look like. Because he's a kicker and a punter. And, like, I don't even have to be glued into the NFL to go, well, if they really, 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 really like you, they may draft you late in the draft. Yeah. More than likely, you're an undrafted free agent. You got to go to a camp. You got to make a team. And, that's the life of that position. Like, nothing changes. What we know about, I think, on the Texas side of things is that if he comes back, he has a legitimate chance to chase down the all-time scoring record kind of cheaply. I mean, no offense, Cameron. If you get it, to the victor go the spoils. But if this were rushing yards and it was Ricky Williams' all-time rushing record by a Texas running back that was going to break it, if Bijan was going for it with 5 seasons, we'd be like, okay, well, he broke the record, but it would always be Ricky broke it in 4. And I think that, but I don't know that anybody cares about the scoring record quite like that. I think Cameron Dicker could get the record. He could get it in 5 seasons. It is a little piece of immortality that I would imagine when he joined the Texas football program way back in the day, he didn't think to himself, my goal is to score more points than any player that's ever played at Texas. Kind of a pretty cool thing, but nothing's changed. And I'm like you, I've been trying to get an answer, and I haven't sensed that there's actually an answer. Here's what people need to know. Texas will take him, no problem. All it would mean for Texas is that one more guy's got to leave, probably, unless the NCAA gives a waiver to that to clear the 85-man roster. Not a huge deal, though. He's the most important returning player that they could have. With all due respect to Anthony Cook, with all due respect to Deshaun Jameson, to all due respect to all of the seniors, there's only a handful of them who were like, I'm going to come back. Cameron Dicker is two positions, and it's two positions that, I don't know what they have. I don't know what to think of Will Stone coming in as a freshman kicker from Regents and having to be the place kicker. I don't know what to think about Isaac Pearson needing to be the punter. I don't know what to think of a scholarship program. Back in the day, I've told you this before, Mac Brown would have like 6 walk-on kickers show up. And the 6 walk-on kickers would have a battle for the job. And the guy that won the job a lot of times would end up being the kicker for 2 or 3 years and get put on scholarship. And then because they used to take kickers on scholarships, and Mac used to always screw it up. Anybody that they offered, it seemed like would miss. And it seemed like the walk-on program developed them well. I don't know that Sarkisian has that in place the way that Mac would. We've never heard Sarkisian say, well, our walk-on program, we've invited 6, 7 guys. Like they're going to fight it out. Like we've never heard that. And I don't know that you can justify spending a scholarship when they're so limited on the position unless they've got so many needs. It really feels like the best thing that Texas could have happen to it is for Cameron Dicker to come back. But we wait, and I'm with you. What's taking so long? Part of me wondered, is he going to do it on Christmas Day? Is he going to give himself a present? Just hasn't happened yet. And very quietly, I think it's the biggest story on the football team right now as it relates to next season. I don't know that they can sign another player that can positively impact the season as much as having Cameron Dicker around for one more year could possibly have. How about that? There's my overreaction. He's that important.
Yeah, I want to see, where did he rank Catch as far as his stats were last year? Let me see if
he was second in the Big 12 in punting.
Okay.
But he statistically had one of the best years punting in the history of the program. Only Michael Dixon, at Michael Dixon's peak, has had a better year punting the football than Cameron Dicker did, which is ironic. You and I raved about Dicker as a punter last year when that happened by accident. Mm-hmm. We were like, they should keep him here. And they did. Yeah. And he had a monster year. And then I think he was among the leaders in the Big 12 in field goal accuracy. It was kind of a cluttered pack. And I don't remember looking at it at the end. He was really solid on field goals. Not a problem. I want to say
third. So I'm looking at it. It's third. He attempted, looks like 15, made 13 of them. So he finishes with an 86.7 percentage.
That's really good.
Which puts him at third. Guy from Texas Tech was at 92.9. Wow. Guy from Iowa State was at 90%. And then Dicker finishes third at that point.
I thought he was closer to 75, that he was that. That's excellent. That's excellent. I mean, and again, it's not that Texas hasn't tried to fill the replacements. They have replacements on hand. It's just that one's is a true freshman from a really small. I mean, Will Stone's never played in front of thousands before, let alone 90,000. And Isaac Pearson's just unproven. And if Cameron Dicker was just okay, it wouldn't be a big deal. That he was among the Big 12 leaders in both places just makes him insanely valuable. You want to keep that guy around as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And the thing that Texas has going for it, they just need some alum to give him a big ass NIL deal.
Correct.
Because it's not like there's a lot of guaranteed money on the table for him as a kicker that he might be passing up. You could objectively look at, well, if he could make $200,000 in NIL money, I'd probably say, hey, that $200,000 in hands worth the $650 in the bush that comes if you make a roster and play all 16 games. If you make the practice squad or something like that, you're making less than 200, if I'm not mistaken, as it is. So I think that this is one of the rare cases where NIL money doesn't have to be crazy good. Yeah. He doesn't need Quinn Ewers money to justify a financial decision that includes him coming back this year. And I wonder if that's what's happening. I wonder.
That's a good point.
He's just trying to iron out some NIL deals.
Yeah, I mean, as a potentially undrafted guy, which we say that's no slight. It's just that's kickers, right? Yeah. So we're talking at best day 3, right? But potentially undrafted, you go to whatever the league minimum is. And so if you're Cameron, you try to see like, can I get that? Can I get half of that this year? You know, with some NIL money, and it probably wouldn't take half of it for him to say, I'll stay in college and hang around here for a little bit longer. I mean, it's not like he's going to risk getting hurt or anything, substantial like that. So, but you're right. There probably is an NIL factor that we hadn't thought about. That's actually a pretty good observation.
Well, and he's got 3. He has to declare until January 15th, if I'm not mistaken. So, even though he hasn't played in 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, or whatever the hell it's been, he's got 3 weeks essentially to come up with the decision. And, because that deadline's in place to include all the players who are still playing in games. This decision for him is probably a little more complicated because we've never lived in a world where this is our first offseason where NIL's been in place in December. Last year it got approved after all the seniors would have already made their decisions. I wonder if we go back and look at who departed from a year ago, how many guys, that might be an interesting little thing to look up. Who left in 2020 that if they'd known that NIL was going to exist and they were going to be able to keep money, does Brennan Eagles might have stuck around?
Yeah.
And quite honestly, maybe he's not the answer because he's not in the NFL right now. But what Texas lacked on the offense and what it still lacks going into next season, they need an outside receiver opposite Xavier Worthy. And that's exactly what Brennan Eagles was. It's interesting now that there's a world that exists for guys that want to get paid. And look, maybe Eagles' situation was complicated. He wanted to go pro. He had it in his head that he was going to be at Texas for 3 years and 3 years only. And to be fair, Quinn Ewers arrives kind of the same mentality, right? Like these guys aren't alone. And when you recruit 5-star guys and you recruit really well, there's a reason why these dudes say, I'm taking my talents for the next 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
There's always like an emphasis on 3 though.
Yeah. Oh, it's 3. It's mainly 3. 4 if something goes wrong, right? Like 4 if I stub my toe for some odd reason and can't play. 4 was a loser.
God, 4, exactly. 4. What am I, a loser here? I'm one of these losers that has to play 4.